Hello, everyone, and welcome to Co-Creation Station, the podcast where we talk about spiritual magic, the law of attraction, the art of allowing, the mind, body, spirit connection, and how to best enjoy this mystical, miraculous, mysterious, crazy, sometimes confounding, but always incredible journey we call life. My name is Collin. I'm a musician, teacher, and tarot oracle card reader located here in beautiful North Hollywood, California.
And my name is Stephanie. Hello. And I am a transformational life coach, and I help people shift away from negative thinking, and their world just opens up to a bigger, brighter world. In San Diego, California.
Sorry. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you're listening to the audio version on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you so much for watching us. If you're watching us on the Co-Creation Station YouTube channel, if you are enjoying other episodes, this episode, and you would like to follow or subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel, give a review, whatever the platform you're consuming us on allows you to do. Everything helps, and we would appreciate it a lot. Before we get to the topic, actually, I want to thank all of our listeners and viewers. It was overwhelming this week to realize that we broke the total of 1,000 overall lifetime views. Which is pretty cool. So thank you so much. That blows my mind that we've had 1,000 views and listens so far. But thank you so much for listening, watching, and supporting us. We greatly appreciate it. So each week here on Co-Creation Station, we start our discussion from a different jumping off point. And in our friend time before the podcast started, we
actually have 5 more minutes left of our friend time. I'm like,
got into friend time. But Stephanie was just saying, "Oh, I got this amazing thing from Abraham. I got to read for you." And I was like, "Wait a minute, that's probably the start of the podcast." So take it away, Stephanie. Tell me what you read and tell me in friend time.
Well, I listen to a lot of their material. There's so much of it on YouTube now, and so it's become my meditation. Sometimes I'll be like, and I have some of my favorites. But I had found this one, and I was like halfway through it, and I was listening to it, and I was like, oh my God. And so I was like, I need to transcribe that part later. And so I listened to it later, and I wrote it down. I was about to read it to Collin. He's like, wait, let's start. So, so this was it. It's, and I'll share where I got it from. It's from Andrea Roman. She has a YouTube channel that I subscribe to. And the title is called, What is Happening? It's Never a Coincidence. And so you can find it on YouTube. And I think the date, I won't tell you the date because I don't want to get it mixed up. I have 2 different dates on here. And so I wrote Abraham. And this is Abraham speaking. Everything I think, oh no, it's okay. So I transcribed it for me. But everything I think about or talk about, I'm constructing pathways that will end up in a manifestation. Okay, let's just take that in. I'm going to read it again. Everything I think about or talk about, I'm constructing pathways that will end up in manifestation.
Dude, sorry, I may have never called you dude on the podcast before. And I just
that's okay. You have a gajillion of them because that's your name for me, dude.
My brain is still in friend time. But
right, me too. I'm like
really quick. I just want to mention 2 things because it lines up exactly with what you just said. Okay. I was thinking a lot this week about Wayne Dyer used to say this a lot in his talks, that you become what you think about all day long.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we should talk about that on the podcast. And the other thing was I saw this quote from Jane Goodall, who's the Gorillas in the Mist, the Girls in the Mist movie, was based on. She said, you cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you're going to make. Which is not specifically about the law of attraction, but I feel like that's, it got me thinking in the same way of
it absolutely is.
We kind of think we're just walking
it's the art of allowing.
Whatever is happening. And it's we're actually almost like a radar homing beacon, sending out energy, and we're attracting stuff to us. And we're also sending energy out to other people, other situations, other organizations, other future events, all that sort of stuff.
And I think that's one of the gifts about the work that I do with clients, with people, is because I know that what I'm teaching them and what they're learning from me and how they shift and grow and expand and change, that has an impact on everyone, their partner, their
Mm.
children, their business associates, the people that they encounter on this day, at a stoplight, at the grocery store,
Yeah.
wherever. Um, yeah, it's beautiful, and it just ripples effect. So, okay, so it blew my mind because I've heard it before in a different
Mhm.
context, but it was just because I had some contrast. Oh, here it is. Okay, because that. Okay, well, so no. I guess I need to say this in order. So our last episode was about contrast.
Resistance. It was about resistance.
Okay, no,
We
because
ended. We
this episode's gonna be after the contrast episode, so that's why.
but didn't we talk about resistance and then end up on contrast? And we were
Yeah,
gonna.
but
This
this
is the
is
deep dive on contrast.
no, it's not. But we were.
Okay.
This is. I thought this was going to be the episode after contrast. Okay, it'll be however
Anyway.
it be.
Yeah.
Okay, so contrast. Okay, so here we'll go with this one's going to be the contrast episode. So I had this contrasting situation on Monday, and damn it, if I didn't keep thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking about it, and that's all. There's so many good things going on in my life, and that was
So
freaking
really
all to
quick,
think about.
we can do a deeper, longer definition, but just so people understand what you're talking about, a contrast experience is where you're experiencing something that in your heart you didn't want. You attracted it, but in your heart it's not something for your greatest good that
I
you
did not
want.
like it. I did not want it.
So you're saying you experienced something that was not on your list of like, please, universe, please send this to me.
And yet, obviously, which I'm realizing more and more today and yesterday, I was like, girl, you attracted that.
Yeah.
And we never want to hear that, right? I don't ever want to hear that. And yet I remember Abraham speaking about Esther, and it was after Jerry had passed, and she really started practicing the art of allowing more and more. She realized how important it was to feel good, and that she realized, like, oh, I created that thing I don't like. Oh, I created that thing I do love. Oh, I created that thing she really got. And so I had that moment yesterday. I was like, ooh, I attracted that situation. Dang
Yeah.
it. And where do I need to soften my brain? Because there were a lot of things about that experience that I really, really liked. And there were some things about that experience I did not like at all. And I kept focusing on the parts that I didn't like, and then it was just getting bigger, and I felt more horrible. And so
It's a really easy thing to do. I mean, we've talked about this before. I mean,
we all do it.
There's multiple pieces to it. I mean, one thing is our brains are set up to look for dangers, threats, and problems. Like that's how it helped us survive all these, millions of years of evolution. There's also the spotlight effect, which is helpful in certain situations. Like if you have a real emergency, like a car accident, you're in a car accident, it can be helpful to like get you to do the right thing you need to do. But at other times, what it does is it blows a problem out of proportion so that you will focus on it. And so the brain just naturally does that a lot of times. So something that isn't a big deal, suddenly like we're inside our own brains where our brains are making it a big deal. So we believe it's a big deal. Like someone will come up to us and go, hey, maybe this isn't such a big deal. And you're like, you don't get it. Like, what? And like, that's the spotlight effect. But then there's also like in our culture, like it's easier to talk about. I still find this, it's easier. Like when, in friend time today, you said, tell me something good. And
that was
yesterday I had a big, good thing I could tell you about, but most weeks when you say that, I still have to take a few seconds and go, because all the stuff that seems off to me or that I'm upset about or whatever, that's right there at the the tip of my brain.
Only because we've been thinking about it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That's the only reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we've all practiced it so much. It's just a habit, and it's a bad habit because it doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve me.
Well, again, I mean, there are parts of it that serve us in limited situations.
No, but what I'm saying that it doesn't serve me is it doesn't serve me to keep thinking about
doing it. Yeah.
That's okay. So let me just rephrase that.
Yeah.
It does not serve me to keep thinking about that situation over, because I started feeling worse, and even just now talking about it, and I didn't even explain to you what it was, but just remembering pieces of it, I went like this. It's attention.
Yeah.
So, okay. So contrast is when we experience something that we don't want
Yeah.
or that feels really uncomfortable. It makes us feel sad or bad or whatever. But we need contrast because in that moment that I was having that was because it was multiple experiences in that whole few hours. Um, what we don't realize, and we never really talk about this in our society, is that Abraham speaks of it as like these rockets of desires shoot out from us. And really what it is like energy. Is like once I know what I don't want, in that moment energetically, I do know what I do want, whether I'm consciously aware of it or not. And in that moment, spirit, God, my higher self says, yes, yes. To all positive requests, it is granted. Yes. And my higher self focuses only on that, and it exists. Law of attraction is responding to my higher self as well. So I have this amazing vortex of all these really cool experiences. And so my job in my physical human self body is to be like, okay, and what is, I I I think I worked really well around that, what had happened. It took me several days to like be like, oh God, what are you doing, girl? And so when I heard this one Abraham by that Andrea Roman posted, I was like, oh yeah, there it is. I so needed to hear that. Thank you, higher self, for guiding me to that. Everything I think about or talk about, I'm constructing pathways that will end up in manifestation. And I was like, do I really want to do I really want to keep thinking about this and manifest more of it? Like, oh heck no. And so I'll read the rest of what I transcribed. And I transcribed it so that part of it is the rest of it is how Abraham stated it. If I stopped, no, maybe some of it is. Anyways, if I stopped talking, today about the things I've been worried about for years or weeks or days, or that thing that started to bother me yesterday, and then I added in or Monday in parentheses, but I took it out the other day. Um, Today, make a decision that I'm not going to talk about it, that I'm going to talk about something that is constructing a pathway towards something I want instead. You know what would happen with the pathway that you've constructed, even if you'd constructed it for 50 years or 20 years or 15 years or 10 years or 5 years. Do you know what would happen? That pathway, it would peter out within 30 days. It would peter out and it would cease to exist. Your point of attraction would no longer be connected to this unwanted thing if you would stop renewing your vibrational connection to it. And that's all. When you were talking earlier, Collin, I was thinking about this. It's like I had experienced it in that moment, but where I did a disservice to myself is I kept reliving it over and over in my head. And I kept having these really negative emotions about it, like fear and worry. And, I was being hard on myself and I was thinking harshly of this other person. And I just kept feeling worse and worse. If I would have, and so I was, where did I wanted to go with this? Oh, because I just kept renewing it. And see, dogs don't do this. Someone talked to me told me something about animals. They're so in the moment, and then they're on to the next moment. And so if I would have been like the dog and just been in the moment, it happened, never thought about it again, and just went on my merry way, I would never have had all those negative emotions, and it just kept making me feel worse and worse and worse. And so the real operative word here is renewing. I just kept thinking about it over and over. And so I had to okay, tell me something good. It was like, what else are you thankful for? And it took me a little while to get out of it and stop thinking about it. And then eventually I was just like, yeah, it's either going to be or not. And I attracted that. Oh, so everything I think about or talk about, I'm constructing pathways. And I like to think of it when I start working with people, I'm like, because some people I work with are really negative thinkers. And I'm like, it's just because you've thought that thought a jillion times. And so it's like the Grand Canyon, you've created these grooves, these neural pathways, right? And so what I do is I help people create new neural pathways. The whole tell me something good is like a new neural pathway of like refocusing on something else. Um, and so how cool is that? I could be thinking about something for, I'm 56, for 50 years, some belief that I have. If I like let that one go and create a new one and just keep renewing that one over and over again, before I know it, it becomes a deep pathway. We were talking about my granddaughter earlier, and I love that girl. She's my soul sister because she is someone who, most of the time, she expects to get what she wants. Not to say that she doesn't have doubt sometimes or what have you, but and you know what? Most of the time she does get what she wants. I adore that girl. She's like a great teacher for me too.
Yeah, there was a lot. I had a lot to say in response to you covered several different topics really well. One thing is, I think that was, I still need to practice remembering this, but that contrast is really a good thing. That quite often it is because one of the things that was a real revelation to me when I started listening to Abraham was that whole the way she talked about the 3-step process, and that is different than The Secret. I would say that's one place where Abraham's critique of The Secret is accurate, which is The Secret sort of tells you, think about something, focus on it, then have good feelings, which they do talk about that, and then you'll manifest something. And what I think is missing from that Abraham explains really well is that when you first have a desire, when your real true heart really wants something like a great relationship or a new car or whatever it is, that it's like your conscious self doesn't have time to like clamp that down. Your heart is so powerful and it's so directly connected to higher power that when you have a desire, it's like a instant message from your heart and your soul, or whatever, however you think about it, your being, to the universe, and the universe goes ahead and creates it for you. It's done. Like when you say this a lot to me, it's already done. Why are you worrying about it, Collin? And I'm like, I know. But it's done. Literally, it's in this thing. And we, for people who want more info, we have an episode called "What is the Vortex?" And that's what the vortex is. The universe takes it and puts it in this, however you want to think about it, spiritual realm, other dimensional realm, whatever. But like, there's no more work that needs to be done to have it happen. The universe has created it. You've sent a direct line to the universe saying, this is, yeah, yeah, exactly. So, all of these things that we want, and this is what's crazy is like, if somebody has a lot of desires their whole life and also thinks thoughts of, I can't have it, and believes they can't have it their whole life, it's like
those pathways, right?
The universe basically saves it all up, and when you croak, you get it all as like one big trip to the Price is Right or something. But the thing we're interested in is how can we win some of those prizes like here while we're still here before we croak, right?
Everything.
But that was so important for me because I thought, and I do feel like I'm a huge supporter and defender of The Secret. I think it's a wonderful introduction to what we talk about.
We would not be here. I would not be here. That was like,
but that is, they have a step process there, and they don't talk about that first step. And the thing about contrast is that experiences that now I know I've attracted, but they're not pleasant. Like I didn't attract them because I was like, ooh, please let me get in a car accident. But I was thinking, I was pouring energy into my whole first year in LA. I was like, oh my God, these drivers are crazy. One of these days I'm going to get in an accident. I'm going to get in an accident. I'm going to get in an accident. And so I bring something to me that way. And and this is a true story. I had a terrible accident. That's a contrasting experience. I attracted it, and I can see now I totally attracted it, but my heart didn't want it to happen. It's just that I poured energy into it. But the experience of the car accident is contrast, and it allows me to form a new desire. And if I have a new desire of total safety driving in LA for the rest of my days here, then that is immediately put in my vortex. And I can get that by feeling good, by using the art of allowing, all that stuff. So yes, the accident Yes, the accident is not great. It's not a wonderful, pleasant experience, but it can be as long as I sort of do the right next step with that, which is don't keep thinking about it. Like, oh, I knew I was going to get an accident. I'll probably get in another one. Like that's what most people do, right?
Yeah.
This makes sense. I mean, these crazy drivers. But like, if I do that, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like, if I just keep doing the same energy, the same thoughts, the same beliefs, the same bad feelings, guess what's going to happen? But the thing about contrast is what we've learned from Abraham, and we've been able to do in our own lives, and you've done it with your many clients as well, is that if you don't get super down about the contrast and go, geez, this kind of stuff's going to keep happening. If you can go, oh, this is clarity on what I don't want in my true heart. And I love that because it shows me directly what I do want. And now that I've connected to what I really do want, that's the rocket of desire that beats my subconscious mind, and then it goes right to the universe, and it puts the thing I really do want in my vortex. Now that thing might come tomorrow, it might come a year from now, it might come 20 years from now, but it's there. And it wouldn't be there if I had not had the accident. The next day, I would have just kept thinking, I'm probably going to get in an accident. So I would have gotten in an accident. But having the accident is a chance for me to go, oh, because I understand vibration and I understand the art of allowing. This was an unpleasant experience, but I can launch desires for something other than this, what I really do want with regard to this topic of my life or area of my life. And it can be a real game changer. And I had this thing happen to me when I first moved to Los Angeles. I was couch surfing, and I had started a new job, and I was also looking for a permanent place to live. So my days were crazy. I had never lived in LA before, so I'm like driving around trying to figure out the driving in LA thing, trying to learn my new job at work. At night, I'm both trying to find my next couch surfing thing so I can, stay here, and then I'm also trying to find like a permanent place to live. And this went on for a couple of months. And without telling all the gory details, at one point, I had a couch surfing gig. I thought it was going to last like 4 or 5 days or something. And the person I was staying with changed their mind after I stayed there a day or two. And they said, I need you to leave right now. Like, I don't want you staying here tonight even. And so I was like, okay. So I packed my stuff up. I put it in my car, and I called my sister, Dr. Collin Worster, who's been on the podcast before. And I told her this story, and I told it from not a positive
good vibration. Better
this
vibration.
Is terrible. Like, why is this happening? And I'll never forget what my sister Kelly said to me. It was the perfect thing, because it flipped my vibration 100%. It really did. And she said, I don't know how, Collin, but all I do know is that this happened to lead you to your greater good.
Aww.
And I was like, what that allowed me to do was to say, okay, this was contrast. I did not want to be booted out. I did not want to be looking at homelessness tonight. My first 2 months in LA, that was not on the agenda for me. But thanks to what my sister said, I can now use this as a vibrational pivot and go, instead of attracting more of that, what I'm going to attract is what I need, which is a permanent place to live. And what I'm going to do, we've talked about this before too, that the key that my sister let me know is I don't know how, and you don't have to know how. If I have a bad car accident, I don't have to know how I'm not going to have another car accident. I don't have to know all the things the universe will do in the future to make me safe on the roads. I just have to be open to it happening so that it comes from my vortex into my life. And so in that particular story, I went to a show that night. A friend of mine from San Diego was in a band, and then her band was doing a show in Hollywood. And I had invited my friend Corey, who's sort of in my band. And Corey had lived here for many years at that point, I think over 15 years, something like that. And I went to the club. We both got there early, and he said, how's your housing search going? And I told him the story of getting booted out of the couch surfing thing. And he texted literally almost everybody he knew in Los Angeles and says, my buddy Collin is a great guy. He just moved to LA. He's looking for a place to live. If anybody knows anything, text me back right now. He's really, I don't know if he said he's desperate, but he probably should.
Yeah.
And one of his closest friend's sister lived in a house where they had 3 bedrooms, and the idea was that there would be 3 people, 1 in each bedroom, and one of the roommates had just moved out, and so they were looking for a 3rd roommate. And so Corey's friend Mindy texted him and said, "My sister, I think her place is looking for some. Let me check." Long story short, I was a permanent resident of that house by noon the next day, and I lived there. And I lived there for 5 years. I lived there for 5 years. So
thank you, Kelly. Thanks.
I thank my sister, because I was really in this point where I was going to attract more homelessness, more crises.
It would not have gone good. Yeah.
But she helped me see, like, oh, yeah, I'm not saying feel great about this that happened. Like, that's not a good experience, but shift your vibration, because if you do this, of like, I don't want that, can be launching the desire of like, you know what I want? I want to be done with couch surfing. I want a home. I want to like finally start living my life here in Los Angeles. And that I was allowed to do that.
I really I've been using this a lot in the past couple of months, is rejection is protection. Because even like in the situation Monday, it's kind of I'm not sure where it's going to go. But what I've been telling myself is if this thing doesn't pan out, it's like a blessing in disguise. So rejection is protection. If this person rejects me, it's for my highest good. Like, just remembering that. And earlier I showed this sign of, I had let my little girl doodle the other day, and there's this one, it says it's done, it's done, it's done, it's done, it's done. I put it on some paper, and I showed that earlier for those who were just listening. That's why Collin just started cracking up. Because when we ask, it's given and it's done. And it's like, we don't even have to figure out the how. And that's where I think it's the hardest for a lot of us, is because we're so taught, we're brought up, and the people who raised us were taught this. And I don't know.
Well, and again, not to beat the drum about the brain, but the brain is a problem solver, right? That's what the brain likes to do. It likes to be given a danger, a threat, or a problem, and then address how to fix it, right?
And so
it doesn't serve us in that scenario.
Yeah, and so we're taught, like, I have to know how, like, and that until we actually physically see it, like, until we actually physically see it, it's not a thing. And it's like, no, it is. As soon as we ask energetically, everything, there's so many ways that the universe can bring it about. And that's what I'm learning right now, trying to practice more. I'm like, oh, it's done, it's done, it's done, it's done, it's done. So that's why I had written that down. And I want to say too, you're talking about the car accident. It's like, bad things happen to us. They're going to happen. All the people get cancer, people get divorced, people lose their jobs, people die. And I want to just say, like, we're not wrong for having these things happen. There's nothing wrong with, having these experiences. It's not a bad thing. And so, when you got in that car accident, it's like there was a lot of good things that came from that. I remember you got a car that you loved, right?
I got a new car right after that for the first time in my life. I was making enough money that I could, actually it was a lease, but I leased a new car, and it was beautiful and gorgeous. And I can't tell you how wonderful I felt every day getting into that car. Like that. That's one of the experiences. A lot of times when I get something new, Abraham talks about this too. Like it's exciting for like 3 days, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's my car, And with that car, I never felt that way. Like every time I saw it parked outside the house I was living in, every time I parked it in the parking garage of the job I had, I was just like, this is so awesome. This car is so amazing, and you're right. And I didn't even know, because I had bought the used car that got wrecked at a time where I didn't have a lot of money, and I knew I had been making more money, and I knew I was doing better financially, but I hadn't looked at like, can I afford a new car? Because I had a car, and that car was okay, but it wasn't filling me with joy every day. It was just sort of like, it is what it is. Yeah. And so it was this doorway to, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've forgotten about that a little bit. I mean, that car, the new car that I got after that accident, helped me feel more abundant on a daily basis just by existing. Like just by me driving that car, I felt like I had leveled up, like I was like, I'm worthy of better things. I'm worthy of, good money and a nice car and a comfortable environment to ride, to my job back and forth every day. Like, oh, I deserve this, like I'm good enough for this. And that, I think, helped my practice of art of the allowing for years while I had that car. It was like, because I just was like better. My whole belief system expanded when I got that car, because I was like, oh, there are things I thought I couldn't afford that, like, oh yeah, I had that belief I can't afford it, but look at this amazing car I now have. So I probably can afford it at some point, or if I want it, it's in my vortex. I just have to allow it. So yeah, pretty cool. All right. Well, this was a great discussion about contrast. Thank you for everything you shared with me, Stephanie. I always learned something, I want to say new. Sometimes it's just really refreshing something I know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really good. So we hope you oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's why I love listening to Abraham on YouTube, because I'm always reminded, like, so yeah,
absolutely. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of today's podcast and found something helpful and useful for you. If you feel called to like this episode or subscribe to us, follow us, give us a review, whatever you're allowed to do, it really helps us. We're super grateful to you.
Thank you.
If people want to find you, Stephanie, what's a way that they can get in touch with you?
Website, www.powerinjoy, powerinjoy.com. And you can find the same thing on Instagram.
Okay. And best way to contact me, we'll put all this in the details, but if people are just listening, it's Instagram. My handle is at Collin, COLLIN _Daniels, DANIELS _Worster, WORSTER. Thank you so much for listening. If you listen to the audio version, thank you so much for watching us. If you watch this on YouTube, we wish you an abundant, prosperous week, and we'll see you next time on Co-Creation Station.
Bye, y'all.